All right, everyone. Welcome to the Vestas Circular Economy webinar. I think we'll get started. I'm Jacob Malthouse. I am the Director of VP Business Development for Foresight. Just a reminder that this webinar will be recorded. Also note that if you have questions and answers, please dump them into the Q&A. Please also feel free to use the chat, but it's easier for us to moderate if you put your questions into the Q&A. We will have a Q&A session after the presentation where we'll be able to go through all of your questions. All right, let's get started. I'm going to start with a brief introduction to our program, to Foresight. We're going to have a quick chat through the Trade Commissioner Service and the role that they play in making connections like this between Canada and the rest of the world. And then we'll talk through the main event, which is the Vestas Circular Economy Challenge. So what is SDG Connect? SDG Connect is an evolution of a program which was really designed to bring together companies that have sustainable development goals and connect them to Canadian companies that are developing solutions to help improve the environmental, social, and governance performance of those companies. It's been driven by a number of years of programming, and it's particularly accelerated this year as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where in-person events are less possible. So we have the opportunity now to connect with companies like Vestas and link them up to the network of startups, entrepreneurs, researchers, and people who are really interested in trying to improve how our economy functions and advance our energy transition globally. So what is Foresight? Foresight is basically Western Canada's leading cleantech accelerator. We deliver a bunch of programs really designed to help accelerate ventures across the country, but we also work with policymakers and we work with industry to try and improve the innovation culture across the country, all with the goal of really speeding up Canada's and the world's energy transition while creating jobs and economic growth. So it's not an easy problem to solve, but we've got a great team, and it's really exciting to work with entrepreneurs like those of you who have joined this call today, and with entrepreneurial companies like Vestas, who are trying to set goals that I think will really change the way our economy functions. We've had a huge impact so far. I won't run through the numbers, but you can see that Foresight is really outcome driven. And that shows in the way we run companies through our programs, and those companies then go on to get financed, grow their revenue, and really deliver green jobs at the end of the day. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Trade Commissioner Service so that they can introduce their programs. I'll advance the slides, Richard, so just let me know when to do it.
Thanks, Jacob. Good evening from Denmark and Copenhagen, and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good morning to you on the West Coast. My name is Richard Higginson. I'm the Trade Commissioner for Clean Technologies at the Embassy of Canada here in Denmark and in Copenhagen, where we're covering the markets of Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And I'm here with a simple message today, and that's just to tell you that we are there to help you. Jacob, you can please go to the next slide. Okay, a little bit about us. We are a part of the Global Affairs Canada, and I'm one of around 10,000 trade commissioners around the world. One of around 10,000 trade commissioners around the world in about 160 locations. That means, and we're here to support any Canadian companies who are looking to export and do more abroad and find new markets for their products. You may have heard yesterday, for example, Justin Trudeau, Minister Ng, talking about the Can Export program and how that will be further supported in the coming months and years, with a particular focus on e-commerce and more virtual events. The Trade Commissioner Service can be part of helping you with that. Jacob, please go to the next slide. As said, I'm one of about 1,000 trade commissioners, and we work with around 10,000 clients per year from across Canada. We've been doing this for about 125 years. We work in 160 locations around the world and have 6 locations across Canada. And what is it that we do? Jacob, if you can please move on. Next one. So first of all, we can help you gain market insights. And what could this mean particularly? Well, this could be this could mean that we give practical business advice about doing business in new markets, which maybe you're not entirely familiar with. And this is actually particularly important, I'd say, at the moment, because each country is experiencing different reopening contexts and stages within the COVID-19 pandemic. And each country may experience evolving supply chain disruptions and closures. Furthermore, it could also mean that we help open the doors for new business opportunities globally. We can identify qualified business contacts, and we can resolve complex business problems in foreign markets. We can connect you with key clients. That specifically could mean that if actually today is a great example of that. Vestas is one of Denmark's biggest and most renowned companies, and with cooperation today with the Trade Commissioner Service, we're really happy to help you, the Canadian companies, talk with Vestas and have this kind of meaningful conversation, and hopefully bring about new opportunities for everybody. Jacob, if you could please go to the next one. A few notes about Cleantech in Denmark. Well, Denmark is a small country, far away. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not everyone maybe even knows a lot about it. It's a country of 5.5 million people in Northern Europe. It's a highly innovative society and is regularly named as one of the most innovative societies in the world. We are regularly named as having some of the best quality of life in the world. We have some of the lowest levels of corruption and highest standards of living. And this is also reflected, I'd say, in what's happening in the clean tech industry. Denmark has a huge clean tech industry here, and it's the home of great companies like Vestas, who are really world leaders in what they do. Denmark has huge plans for the future, and some of the most ambitious goals in the world to combat climate change. Some easy examples would be Copenhagen's plans to be carbon neutral by 2025, and Denmark to reduce its carbon emissions by 70% by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050. Here, Canada and Canadian companies have a great reputation. They're well known, liked, and people like to work with Canadians, so you won't have any problems or any reputational problems of trying to work this market. It's a very open market and very friendly market for Canadian companies to work in. The only thing I will say, just to bear in mind, is that there tends to at times be a preference towards local suppliers or Scandinavian suppliers. So it can take a little bit of work to get into the market, and you need to do your research. You need to build your contacts here in the market. That's obviously rather harder to do right now than normal. But when things are getting back to normal, that should be very doable. And of course, between now and then, you have great opportunities like today, where you can connect with great companies like Vestas. Jacob, if you can please go to next. So how to do it? As I said, my name is Richard. You find here my email up there. And also you can find that wherever you are across Canada, you have the opportunity to be in contact with someone locally. So we have 6 offices across Canada, covering all the provinces. And if you have any general questions, you have the right and you have the ability to go get in contact with someone in your local office and speak to them about how they can help you. As said, we're there to help you. We're there to help you expand your business abroad, and we're there to support your business and make you move forward into the future in the best way as possible. And on that note, I'll wish you a great event today, or a great webinar, and I hope that you find the information from this useful, and that we're able to see you in Denmark soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Richard, and really appreciate your support for this program.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, I will move it over to Vestas.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the call today. Thank you, Richard, for the lovely introduction to Denmark. My name is Anders. I'm based out of Vestas' global headquarters in Aarhus, Denmark. And I'm being joined here today by my colleague, Alan Korsgaard, who is part of the sustainability management team in Vestas. And today we'll be talking about sustainability with respect to the challenge that Vestas has created with Foresight on turbine blade recycling and design. And we're targeting the 2 SDGs, number 12 and 7, respectively, responsible consumption and then affordable and clean energy. So this is really about circular economy, and I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of you out there with emerging solutions that can help Vestas tackle blade recycling and design to enable us to have a better product in the future. Next slide, please. So just to give you a brief overview, I think a lot of people probably know Vestas Wind Systems. We are the world's leading wind turbine manufacturer. We're designing, we are manufacturing, we are erecting, installing, and we're also servicing an incredible fleet of turbines globally. It was actually announced today in our Q3 results that we are now in 84 countries, recently with the entry into Vietnam and Colombia. So we do have a truly global footprint. We've been in many countries for many years, and we continue to leverage our design and our heritage and our technology leading platform to continue the penetration of wind energy globally, and to enable the decarbonization of new industries, not only electricity, but then also other industries such as electric vehicles, transportation in general, or heavy industries such as steel, cement, and other topics as well. So we do really have a global footprint. We are structured in the way that the global headquarters is in Denmark, and then we have a lot of regional offices, the main ones being Portland in the US, and then we have Madrid for Europe and Singapore for our ASP region. Yeah, next slide, please.
Yes, perhaps. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me, Anders? Yeah, great.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Alan, and thanks for the introduction, Anders. I just want to be sure that you could hear me. I'm sorry I'm not in video. It's evening here in Denmark, and I had to drive my daughter to some sports. So that's about it. But I can say that, it's already introduced, that I'm actually a part of the sustainability or work on the sustainability strategy in Vestas. That is an initiative that is directly supported by our executive manager, CEO, Henrik Andersen. So the team I'm a part of is reporting directly to him. The thing is that we introduced the sustainability strategy in the beginning of 2020. The history has been like, well, making wind turbines, that's sustainable in itself. And we were not looking at our own operations, but actually to manufacture a thing like a wind turbine, actually also have a footprint. And then there's also the issue about what to do when these wind turbines grow older and they're going to be decommissioned and dismantled. Well, we also need to be sustainable in our operations, and we introduced sustainability in everything we do. So that is integrating sustainability across the whole value chain in Vestas. And what is that about? Well, there's four main headlines in our sustainability strategy. And the first one is about to be carbon neutral by 2030. And here it's really important to mention that we want to be carbon neutral in Vestas without using carbon offsets. So that is going for our scope 2 and 3 emissions. So in the ambition is to be have a 55% reduction in 2025 and 100% in 2030. And then you could ask, what about your scope 3 emissions? That is the emissions from our supply chain, which is the largest emitter we have in Vestas, simply because we buy the steel, we buy the concrete, and so on. And here we expect our supply chain to reduce their CO2 emission by 45% per megawatt generated by 2030. So that's actually a really ambitious target that has a deep impact on our suppliers as well. And of course, that's an issue because it's a hard target to reach. So that's why we are reaching out to our existing suppliers, but also potentially new suppliers of technologies and materials here in Vestas, because we're going to solve and reach this ambitious goal together. Then we have another part. That's what we're also going to talk about today. It's on the same line. It's about producing zero waste wind turbines. That's what I'm going to take a deep dive into in the challenges. So that is, we want to not to landfill anymore. All materials we have in Vestas is going to be recovered or recycled. So that is moving away from landfill in 2040. Then we have also introduced the within our employees that we want to look into diversity and inclusion. So we want to be to increase our social responsibility here and increase the number of women in leading positions in Vestas. And then finally, we're going to work to work in for the transition of the world to be powered by sustainable energy. So that is what I normally call the electrification of industry. So instead of burning coal, or you need other fossil fuels to power your industry, then you can actually use electricity from, for instance, wind turbines. But of course, there's also other renewable technologies on the market. So yes, next slide, please. So this challenge is actually built up of in two phases, because the thing is that I'm normally splitting this issue about the blades, because the blades, they are made of composites. And they are very, how to say, visible on a wind turbine. So everybody know we have these big plastic things turning around on a wind turbine. So what to do about them? And I'm splitting it into two challenges. So there is a challenge with the wind turbine blades we have on existing wind turbines. So that is all the wind turbines you see out in the country. That's the wind turbines we're producing right now. And then there is the challenge is, the next challenge is, what about the wind turbines that we are going to manufacture within the next years? How do we make them more recyclable? How do we go into circularity of the materials and of the design on the wind turbine blades that we're going to design in the future? The thing is, if we take a look at the wind turbines that's on the market right now, spinning around, then we have a lot of wind turbines, especially in Europe, but also in the US, that within the next 10 years are going to be dismantled. And they are made by a complex mixture of carbon fiber, glass fiber, foam, epoxy resin. There'll also be wood in some of them. So how do we convert this into a material? How do we convert these old blades into value? How do we get more value out of them? What can we do not to recycle them, but to take the remaining of these blades and put them into market, into new products, or how do we close this circularity loop, the carbon cycle here? So we are looking for startups which have solutions for separating or recovery or recycling the material in the wind turbine blades. So there is a commercial task here to do, because it is like it's very expensive to make recycling of the wind turbines blade today. So that's why they end in very often in landfill. But we see more and more legislation that is going in the direction that the landfill is going to be not be allowed anymore, especially here in Europe. And I imagine that the same could happen in Canada, which normally also is having some strict environmental regulations. What we don't want to is that our blades are going to be incinerated, because that's simply not our landfill. So that's simply not how to say it, recycling, truly recycling. So that's the first challenge. What to do about the existing blades? How do we get value out of them? How do we do recovery? How do we recycle the materials in the blade? So the next challenge, that is turbine blade design. And I admit this is perhaps it's even a harder task, because it's hard to know what's going to win in the future, and especially into materials. It can be pretty expensive to develop completely new materials, but it could also be looking into designs. But I know there are some ideas out on the market. There are startups that are working with advanced materials that can be used to make our next generation of recyclable wind turbine blades. So we're looking to glues. It could be resins. It could be the foam. Often today we use thermoplastics here. That's in the wind turbine blades. It's a fiber that we use for strength in the wind turbine blades. So everything with a sustainable edge here, also design or production technologies, is of a very high interest to Vestas. So again, we're looking for companies who could assist us in, or who have some ideas on TRL level, 3 to 6 for a new blade design that improves the recyclability or refurbishment or reuse of our new blades or future blades, new sustainable materials. So, and then of course, then there are some constraints, and that is that there is a design and there is also some durability of the materials that you put into the wind turbine blades that you need to know something about. But of course, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We can assist you within that. And if you get very close to core, of course, there are some issues with NDA and so on. Yes, thank you.
Great, Alan. And maybe this is where I wrap up from the Vestas end before I hand over to you, Jacob. So just want to mention, I was so humbled to introduce Alan as part of the management team around sustainability in Vestas. Myself is a part of the Vestas Ventures, fairly new initiative, a corporate venture capital initiative with the intent to make minority investments into high potential startups within 4 different focus areas. And then one of these focus areas is obviously what we're discussing today, sustainability and advanced materials. So we're coming from the you can say the perspective that we are interested in investing small amounts into companies that have a potential and attractive value proposition around what Alan just described for these 2 challenges. But it could also be in other ways of collaboration. We are obviously very open to that. Jacob.
Thank you, Anders. Thank you, Alan, for joining and talking through that. Very clear and concise explanation. I'll just run through quickly here the timelines so that everyone is aware of how we're going to operate the remainder of the challenge. So the submission window will close on Friday, December 4th at 12 noon Pacific time. It will be, you will see the submission form and all details will be posted to the URL I just posted into the chat. And it's a fairly straightforward application process. We ask some baseline questions about a point of contact. We ask for some information about your company, pretty high level just to establish your bona fides. And then we ask for some information about our technology. Between December 4th and January 15th, we will conduct evaluations based on your submissions. Again, the goal is to identify technologies that we think will be of interest to Vestas. And we'll work with the Vestas team and with the Trade Commissioner Service to ensure we have good quality submissions. We'll also be marketing the challenge broadly in the run-up to December 4th. What we generally do in these challenges is select a number of finalists. So it can range really from 2 to 6 finalists. In this case, the challenge is quite broad. There's a lot of opportunity. So I do encourage you to submit, and we'll try and accommodate as many finalists as we can. Finalist pitches will take place on Wednesday, February 3rd. So we give you a little bit of time to prepare a presentation. We will provide you with a presentation template, and you will be pitching individually and separately from one another. So you don't have to worry about revealing competitive secrets to others. And then finally, winners will be selected and announced on February 12th. So again, it's a great opportunity. You can see that Vestas has some ambitious goals in the short term and even over the next decade. So it's a great chance to build a relationship by showcasing your technology to this innovative company. With that, I think we'll turn it over to some Q&A. Really interested in your questions, any specifics that you might have. Please dump them into the Q&A or into the chat. So we'll open it up now for questions. All right, rather than have too much dead air, I will jump in and just ask if the Vestas team can talk a little bit about the technology readiness levels that you're interested in, and just explain that for both challenges. What kind of stage of company are you most interested in working with for these challenges?
I think from my part, I'm also a part of the innovation and concepts department in Vestas. So we're pretty much used to work within also relatively low TRL levels. So that means that collaboration with universities and startups, where you have startups leaving university, that, I mean, we can take it from there. We do have the infrastructure and the knowledge to work at a very low TRL level if you can tell us that it's a really promising technology. Also up to higher TRL levels, of course, the less risk, then there's also it's also a question about how do we then invest in you, if that's the question, and Anders, he knows a lot about that, how risk and money is following each other. So I think we're pretty broad, and we're really open-minded here because it is an issue. So to solve this, to tackle this challenge, I mean, for instance, if you look into recycling of old blades, that the task hasn't been solved yet, and there's loads of areas where we could work together on developing a technology that could be used for recycling the old blades, so to get value out from it. And if you look into new materials, it doesn't mean we don't expect you to have a completely blade or a complete design. It could be you have some ideas or technologies for fibers or for resin or for glue. We can take it one at a time, or a coating that is, for instance, still very durable, but still also have a profile that makes it so that it has less environmental impact. So we take it both the large projects and at low TRL level, and small projects at high TRL level. We're pretty open to discuss in a broad range of projects.
Thank you. That's really helpful context, I think, for the presentation, and for the kind of companies that you're looking for. Looks like we do have some great questions coming in, so I'll start working through them. From Kazem, does Vestas have a goal in mind in terms of volume for recycling blades?
Yes, definitely we have. And I can tell you, it's not only a goal that we do have, simply because in France, you start to see legislation where they want to have 100% recycling in the future. So definitely we have a goal, and that's also our ambitious goal in 2040, of course, but I guess that is going to be before 2040. We're going to recycle the blades 100%. The thing is, you could potentially recycle a blade 100% today, but it's, that's also if you have a lot of money, and that's just going to be too expensive. So everything can be done for money, but definitely our ambition is to have fully recyclable blades. And when we talk about recycling here, then I would like to put focus on the circularity. We have a focus on circulating the carbon here, so to put carbon back into the value chain somehow. How it's done, well, let's figure out, hopefully together.
Excellent, great answer. Thank you for that. Next question from Miriam Imani. How can we receive more technical information about the challenges? So I think I can answer that. I would just suggest emailing myself directly. I'll put my email into the chat here. And I can work with the Trade Commissioner Service and the Vestas team to answer technical questions that you might have, and or facilitate an NDA if it's necessary.
Maybe I jump in here, Jacob, just to add some comments.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, so just jumping in to say that from a venture perspective, we're looking also for maybe just to put in a different context for seed through Series B companies. We have no problem of I would say entering in any of these rounds, and we have the intent to follow up since we're a strategic investor. And to answer some of the questions, at least I noticed one of the questions from Liz in the chat. Is Vestas open to recycling and repurposing of blades? Yes, obviously, it's both goes for recycling, but also repurposing of blades. Yes.
So yes, both. Okay. Great. Thanks for that question, Liz. I'll keep working through the list here. Some great questions, everyone. Thanks for that. From Larry Bank, who will own the IP under this competition? Will we need to sign over to Vestas in advance?
I can tell a bit about that. I think we'll take that from case to case. It's not that I mean, everybody has to make a win here. So that's the negotiation, of course. It's also clear that as when we are that close to the core, then we cannot rely on IPR that we are not in control of. Then we would more or less say thanks, but no. So but that's we've never experienced that. I think we negotiate that. We are normally pretty fair. So we take it case by case. So we don't have any intentions on a hostile takeover of IPR. That's not how we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's always helpful to understand. From Michael Patsy, further to the question about volumes, what is a typical lifespan for the blades? And then following on that, how much does a blade weigh, or better yet, mass per kilowatt of generation?
From a blade, if we have a really good blade, then it could have a lifetime of 30 years, and some of these blades, they are actually refitted into new to repowered wind turbines, or second-hand wind turbines, I'm sorry. So where we have a turbine that is taken down and sold again, and then erected again. So that some blades have a long life, but it's very much dependent on where they are placed. But normally we say they need to have a lifespan of 30 years. So you can count on that. On the mass, on the blade, that's very dependent on the size of the wind turbine and also the wind regime. But let's say between 12 to, if we take offshore also in, and future blades, 12 to 50 ton. So that's the span. It's a wide span. And then somehow the average is in between, in the middle of that.
Yep, that's helpful. Everyone, please also feel free to email questions to me following the presentation. If you feel you need more details, again, we can work with Vestas to get through that. It is really helpful to ask them now, though, obviously, because you're answering them for anyone who might view this in the future as well. From Kwangdong Dam, thank you for the presentation. For the first challenge, can fuels be considered as valuable materials?
Fuel is a valuable material, but again, that is comparable to incineration. That incineration with heat or energy recovery, that is still regarded as something between disposal and recovery. You are not closing the loop if you make fuel, so that is an issue to us. We would like not to get fuel, but of course today what we see is that blades are chopped up, they are shredded, and then they are incinerated with heat recovery. That's more or less the same. And that's, I mean, that's not a circularity truly. So we would like to get a step further than that and get closer to true circularity.
Yeah, that's helpful. Question from Christine Bryce. Does Vestas plan to operate the facility for valorization of materials?
Yeah, what is a good answer to that? Perhaps not. I don't know. We don't have any. It's not that we completely said no to that. It's not that we say that's we are never going to do that, or that's what we're going to do. I think we will again take that case by case. Everything is open to us. It's not normally, it's not a part of our value chain, but future is also changing. So not necessarily. Let's take that case by case.
Okay. Yeah. So from Jason Purcell with ZillaWorks, developing a bioepoxy resin from industrial hemp, that's their work. Did I hear you say that your US HQ is in Portland, Oregon? Is this admin or manufacturing? Also, can you provide any specs for the performance of the epoxy resin needed for your blades?
Let me jump in here, Jacob. So with respect to Jason's question, I think there's also a couple of other questions in the chat that is addressing this, with respect to our global footprint. Okay. With respect to Portland, is administration. We have manufacturing different places in the US or different places in the world. We have a lot of manufacturing around Colorado. But with with respect to this challenge, it's through the sustainability team that Alan's part of, and then Vestas Ventures, which I'm part of. So there won't be, to address that, Jason, any specific dialogue with the Portland team with this respect. And then I think Larry Lessard asked in the chat roughly, some of the same geographical questions. So he put, let me see, where was
does Vestas prefer a European location? Does it matter if you're setting a pilot, if you have a good recycling idea and you want a pilot plant, does it matter where it's located?
Yeah, exactly. No, and obviously we need a recycling plant where the need is, where the need for decommissioned turbines are. But obviously with such a big order backlog that we have today, and with such a big global fleet that we've installed over many years, we are looking into, in 10, 20 years and 30 years, an incredible amount of turbines that we need to decommission. And for that reason, we need to have solutions globally. So if someone out there on this call, maybe today, has solutions that is, suitable soon in Europe or in Asia and the US, we're more than happy to look into that. Obviously, we need to understand if we can replicate these solutions elsewhere in the world. And I think George Terry then also asked in the chat, just quickly there, Jacob, where would the blades be recycled? Is the intent to have multiple locations around the globe? And yes, it most likely is, because the value of a decommissioned turbine blade is typically very low, which means that if you had to transport it even overseas, it would simply cost too much to recycle it. So obviously, we would also prefer down the line a decentralized recycling setup where we recycle locally as good as we can. But that's a journey. That's a long journey.
But if
great.
I can add to that, Anders, I think also, I mean, it's not only Vestas blades that's the issue here. So if you're able to make the winning technology, then it will also be other brands of wind turbines. But there's also other industries that actually have some high amounts of composite waste. For instance, the automotive industry, the marine industry, the electronic industry, the construction industry. So the right solutions could also tap into that if we're talking about market size. Thanks.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. It's clearly a huge opportunity. I wanted to just turn back to the second part of Jason's question. He asked about any specs for the performance of epoxy resin needed for the blades. If you don't have that to hand, it's something we can answer offline too.
Yes, but I think these specs for an epoxy resin, they can be found in literature. There's a lot of literature on what is the requirement for the resin and also for the fiber. So tensile strength and compressibility and so on. And that is how it's exactly is in Vestas. It's not something that we disclose, but I will always refer to literature on this topic. It will get very close to Vestas specs.
So general literature on the design of the turbine blades?
Yes, loads of several universities. They have some. They've made some, how to say it, blades types they can practice on when they do calculations. And here they have all the specs So that's, I think that can be found there. You could also, if it's a resin, I think you could go into the big epoxy company and figure out the properties of their systems and take it from there. So I think it is available a lot of places, these specifications.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Okay, working through from Michael Q. What is the carbon intensity number that the Vestas wind blade would currently have if it got landfilled?
I need some help on that question. What is meant by carbon intensity? So is it a ton of CO2 in a blade, or? Yeah,
I'll ask him for a clarification.
Yeah, so because there is, of course, in the material there are encapsulated CO2. So that's of course a part of it, if that's
sure
what's been asking for.
I'll move to the next question for now from Courtney Hunter. Harrison Blade Solutions in British Columbia, working with the University of British Columbia, ensuring no question there. So that's just an introduction. Thanks very much for joining, Courtney. From Dan, are there any Vestas turbine blades in Canada that are currently ready for decommissioning?
That is a good question. I must honestly say that I actually don't know. I have a pretty good insight of what is going on, but I haven't got a clue if there is any in Canada. I think it's a relatively young market, but I actually don't know. It could. I don't know. I can find out.
Yeah, that's fine. It is. We can circle back, Dan. If you just send me an email, we can look that up.
I think it's important to say that we're very much thinking as a global company. So it doesn't matter. I think perhaps it could be in Canada, but if you have the right solution, and I'm talking about the right solution, well, then we would like to distribute it globally. It's a global issue we have. It's not a local issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great clarification. Next question from Greg. As an initial repurposing of blades, is there any opportunity for that use in the construction of the tower portion to possibly reduce the steel requirements? Also wondering if Vestas is looking at green concrete.
We are looking at green concrete, but I think concrete is a bit difficult simply because we procure concrete locally. It's just a local how to say goods or construction thing. So it's hard to work with. Steel is much better much more easy because you have some really big steel mills and some really big blast furnaces, and here you can make a difference in order to reduce the CO2 impact from steel. And then you talked about using the blade, the composite old blades in towers. And the big issue here is that even though that a blade at end of life looks completely nice and dandy and fine, then it's often not much worth anymore because it's there's a lot of fatigue. So its fatigue strength is very low. There is not more in the blade. So that's no, we can't use it for tower. I'm sorry. It would be nice if we could.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you. Nigel Bosworth, what is the timeline to start reprocessing of blades and number of blades per year coming out of the service?
I do have some global numbers, but I don't have them from the top of my head. We're talking about 25,000 tons, as far as I remember, in 2025 in Europe. That's the number I remember, but I actually have the numbers on my computer, so I can dig them up. And I also think if we're talking about composite recycling, then add to old blades, you can add factory waste, because from the factories where we do produce blades, we actually have waste amounts of composites that are even larger than the blades that starts to reach end of life today. Of course, in the very near future, then the factory waste is going to be lower than the blades that reach end of life. So I think the mass of composites that needs to go into recycling is relatively high.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can find these numbers for you if you like.
Yep, that would be helpful. All right, Nigel, please send me a note as well, and we can follow up. Next question from Courtney Hunter. Are the blades absolutely at life's end, or could it be refitted with a new blade upgrade so the blade could be installed on a new or updated turbine, i.e. a life extension program, for example, like in the aerospace industry?
When we do sell the second-hand wind turbines, we do a fatigue lifetime calculation, and so that's what we do. Then we can calculate how long time a blade has in it after the wind turbine has been decommissioned and sold for second-hand. But normally, no. It's a blade is like one big piece of material glued together. So it's not that it's made for or designed for disassembly. So if you had an idea for the design for disassembly, please submit it to us.
Mm-hmm. Next question from Desiree. Is Vestas able to provide technical knowledge support in the context of the blades to winners throughout the development process? For example, what kind of involvement or participation would you expect to have in a case that you wanted to move forward with a solution with a Canadian partner?
I think it's a good question. Thanks for that. So to put simply, if you're the winning company in this competition, we obviously think that there's something really interesting in what you do. With respect to then saying now that we will offer X, Y, Z support, that's impossible for me to say, because it's solely depends on the project. How mature is it? Is the project looking for a commercial demonstration or pilot demonstration, or a technical demonstration in a lab? Can we provide facilities to support that, or could we provide some engineers to support you in reaching a couple of milestones? So that's really difficult for us to commit now to anything, because it's such an open competition. And what Alan mentioned earlier is that we're looking for TRL 3 to 6 solutions. If you have a TRL 2, I think submit your proposal, your solution anyway. So it's an enormous breadth of solutions that we're going to be presented for. So we'll simply have to take that one by one.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the underlying thing there is that given the scope of the transition that you're undertaking and looking at the regulatory landscape long term, it seems that Vestas is really committed to this and to working with good ideas to try and make them a success. Absolutely.
And you could easily foresee that there would be 5 companies out of this competition that we would want to partner with and collaborate with. So it's really up in the air, but it's clear that our sustainability strategy is anchored and sponsored by our CEO. It's a top priority for our company. We clearly expect that markets will soon start to impose sustainability requirements. So in order for Vestas to bid and participate in auctions in markets such as France, for example, we simply need a very strong sustainability profile. We need to be able to justify for how we process materials and how we after decommissioning process the materials, and the lifespan of the turbine, how is the CO2 impact been. So we do see that pull from the market, and that push on our customers is being pushed throughout the value chains, that it eventually lands on the shoulders of an OEM. So an extremely important topic for us, no doubt.
Definitely. Next question is from Liz. She's just asking to clarify on the second part, what are the principal composite components on the turbine?
The principal composite component, I mean, it's today it's epoxy and glass fiber. That's what it's made about. So it's continuous glass fiber in epoxy, and the continuity is really important to have the strength. And then in Vestas blade technology, we do have carbon protrusions, so that is carbon beams. Also, again, continuous carbon fibers. In that can be polyurethane, it can be polyvinyl ester or epoxy. So continuous fiber in a thermoset resin. That's basically a blade.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you. Next question again from Michael Q. So he's just describing again a waste to energy processing company using HCl to convert material into biocrude oil and carbon black, can be upgraded to biodiesel or biogasoline, can be used as a fuel blend for refineries. Carbon black can be activated to activated carbon for various applications. Would you consider this kind of solution a closed loop? In addition, we could try and recover carbon from the products that make the carbon fiber for the wind blade to close the loop.
But I think here, this is a good example, Jacob, with Michael's questions here. I think we're extremely open-minded. We're eager to hear what solutions you might have out there. So I think this is a good example of, to submit your solution, write it out for us, visualize how this works, how this closed loop works, and we'll have a look at it. I think this is a great opportunity to submit your proposal. It will sometimes be hard for us in advance to say whether this is, in or outside of scope, because our sustainability scope is incredibly large, right? So, please do go in and submit everything you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one from Kazem here that I can answer. On the website, I cannot find any information about the application file format template. Yeah, the application form will be updated later this week, so please check in with that website. It's a very basic Google form with some written answers. And if you would like to email a slide deck to me, you can do that. Please keep it to 10 slides if you can. But again, the application form will be posted to foresightcac.com/Vestas-challenge this week. Next question from Jason. Can you disclose what epoxy Vestas is currently using so that we can benchmark against that in the formulation of our bio-epoxy resin?
We're using a variety of epoxies from a large range of leading suppliers globally. So no, I cannot disclose directly which type we use, but it's not that we have one company supplying our epoxy. There's a lot of companies who supply epoxy to Vestas.
Yeah, so I think
and
one of the ways
it's not a secret special epoxy, just to mention that.
Yeah, got it. Okay. No, that's good to know. And so it seems like what you would do is just look for some benchmark data that's publicly available, look at the range of epoxies that could be used, maybe talk to some epoxy companies, and then use that to kind of develop your benchmarks. Next question, is it possible to post the follow-up Q&A information so that we can see all the responses? Yes, absolutely. The webinar will be recorded. It will include the Q&A responses. Next question in from Liz. Okay, that's just a general comment about the life cycle of the Canadian landscape.
Maybe quickly, Jacob,
question.
a question from George Terry on the chat, asking how important is reducing CO2 used in the concrete. Obviously, that is extremely important for us. We use a tremendous amount of concrete in our foundation of the turbine, but also in the turbine tower, for that matter. So, extremely important for us. It will always be a question of whether that responsibility then falls on the shoulders of Vestas to decarbonize concrete, or whether we do that in partnership with cement or concrete manufacturers, for that matter. But absolutely relevant, yes.
Thank you. I'm just writing the answer in there. Excellent.
Especially concrete is a really funny area, because I think it's highly interesting. It can be electrified, but you'll still have some CO2 emission. But you could make a carbon sequestration on it if that's the kind of technologies you're looking into. So I think there's a lot of opportunities within the concrete industry where you have actually one of the highest CO2 concentrations in the gas leaving these factories. So in general, it's really exciting place to take a look.
No, that's great. That's great. Thanks for that. Question from Mike in the chat. Cost per kilogram to chop up and send the material to disposal. Is that something that you have to hand?
Yes, I do have that. What we talk about, it's chopping up, of course, has a cost. Then it's transport, and then it's a gate fee. But where we can do that, where it's cheapest, where we talk about chopping, transport, landfilling, lower than 300 euros per ton. It's cheap. It's really cheap. Gate fee in the US is between $50 to $150 per ton. Then of course there is the shredding, and then transport. But transport, that's not a fixed number. That's dependent on how far they're going to transport it.
You're welcome, Mike. Quick question from Cass in the chat. Joined late. Not sure if this was answered. Would Vestas be willing to sign an NDA to view the technology from a Canadian SME? So would you be willing to, again, enter an NDA for a particular technology?
Yes, we obviously would like that, right? But obviously we need to understand what's behind the NDA, so to say. So at least have some teaser of what we would be interested in hearing. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, let's see. Just going down to Courtney Hunter here. If the modified blade was able to operate at a lower TSR and develop the same power generating capability of the original OEM design, the blade's carbon footprint could be extended over a longer life, and the blade investment could be considerably lower than starting from scratch and building a new blade. So just a question there. I think it's a general question. Do you guys have any comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I really don't think if you want to design a blade which has a longer fatigue lifetime, then you've most likely added too much material into it. That's I think that's what I think. Too much material is too much mass. That means more concrete or more steel in the tower. So that's always a
trade-off.
A flip side, a trade-off. So that's blades today are really slender design, very highly engineered piece of plastic and glass and carbon. So we want to reduce the weight, and a reduced weight on a blade also means reduced carbon footprint from steel in the tower and concrete in the foundation, and steel in the foundation for that matter.
Yeah. So it's interesting that the trend towards a lighter blade is an important component of what you're looking for.
Yeah, because in the complex system, if you have a heavier blade, then you also have a higher environmental impact from the rest of the system.
Yeah. That's really helpful. Okay, let me just see. Question from George Terry. If you like an idea, but it is not selected as the winner, is there still a chance to work with Vestas?
Yes, obviously, there's always a chance to work with Vestas. I think the criteria for being a winner or not shouldn't, drive our potential collaboration. If you have something that's super interesting, we are more than happy to work with you. As I mentioned before, sustainability is an enormous commitment from Vestas. So there could be tens of winners down the line. So please do, reach out, and if there's a reason, why not continue to collaborate? Yeah,
exactly. Okay, let's see, just one question here from Kazem. The recycling challenge, are you looking for a pilot scale solution or a commercial scale one? This will change how the required equipment and budget for the solution. How big are the projects that you're looking for in terms of budget?
I think Alan, you can also ask answer if you have any input there. But I think we can't say, what's the size, what's the budget, is it pilot or field demonstration or any of that. It solely depends on the solution. It's really dependent on the solution. So depending on what you have, what maturity you are in, and what you need as well. I mean, what are your needs? I'd be more than happy to also see in the material you submit that what would be the number one thing that you would like Vestas to support you with, because it's super important for us to understand that if we are engaging in a partnership or some form of collaboration or investment or anything like that, what is it that you would like us to support with, right? So I think I'll also include that.
You know what, that's a great point. And I think we might even just add that into the application form, which is one of the reasons we didn't publish it yet. Sometimes we learn stuff and we can tweak that form to have good outcomes. All right, excellent questions. Really pleased with everybody's enthusiasm for asking Vestas. I think we learned a lot about the nature of this challenge, how broad the opportunity is, and the scope of Vestas' ambitions here, and really excited to see what Canada can produce to help deal with this challenge. Any other final remarks, Vestas, from the team, and then I'll just turn it over to the TCS to close it off.
Yeah, I just want to wrap up here, Jacob. Thank you, and say thanks to everyone who joined the call and submitted all of your questions. I think a general comment will be that throughout a lot of these questions, and I know that Alan mentioned this earlier, there are tons of academic journals out there with scientific papers that outline all of the technical specs of a blade, how blades was made in the past, how blades are made today, how they might be made going forward. So I think there'll be a lot of information out there that you can draw upon. Both Alan and I, where we come from in Vestas, we are extremely used to working with a lot of assumptions and your high level guesstimates. So I think for that matter, your solution or what you propose in your submission doesn't have to be bulletproof by any means. It's better to come up with rough sketches and rough numbers and figures for how it might look, because that will provide us the necessary indication of your solution and the proposition you have. So please go out there as well and look up all the different technical specs. That also comes with costing and how much do we pay for steel and cement. We pay a market price plus minus a smaller percentage, and there's a lot of figures on that out there.
Excellent, thank you so much. With that, I'll turn it over to Richard just for some closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacob, and thank you to Vestas for the great information and great presentation. And thanks everyone as well for the fantastic questions regarding the challenge. If you want to know more, I think you have all the details there about how to find out more about the challenge on Foresight's website. Please also feel free to get in contact with me if you are interested in knowing more about other similar projects which could be going on, or what's happening in Denmark and Cleantech, or how the TCS can help you in the Danish market, or actually in any other markets. Please feel free to get in contact. My contact details were there on my presentation earlier. I can also put you in touch with colleagues around the world or in Europe or in other sectors if you think there's something relevant for you. So yeah, thanks again very much to everyone. And I hope you have a great day and look forward to working with you.
Have a good evening, team in Denmark, and we'll look forward to the next stage of this challenge. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.